Adolescence. Adolescence, age from around age 12 to 21. Theorists on adolescence: Erik Erikson, David Elkind, and John Piaget. Okay, Freud called adolescence the genital period. Erikson calls adolescence identity versus role confusion. Piaget calls adolescence formal operations. And David Elkind says adolescence is characterized by learning to deal with thoughts and ideas. Some features of adolescence. Features of adolescence. Let's suppose I take this key, put behind my back, pull it out, and ask a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 15-year-old, which hand is in? Each individual is going to have a different approach to my question. 10-year-old, 5-year-old, they're learning to deal with what? Learning to deal with symbols, right? Remember, rapid language development, pre-operations, main mode of thinking is intuition. So the 5-year-old's going to be guessing, it's this hand, it's this hand, it's this hand, it's this hand. On the other hand, the 10-year-old, they're learning to deal with rules, as Piaget called it, concrete operations. So they're trying to figure out the system. It's in this hand, it's in that hand, it might this hand. Wait, he uses two hands, might this hand. On the other hand, the teenager is going to ask, what is this guy really up to? Not which hand is he in, but what is this guy really up to? Think about that, the ability to think about thoughts. But here are some of the features of adolescent thought. Scientific reasoning. Scientific reasoning. What does a scientist do? A scientist comes up with a hypothesis, he tests the hypothesis, then he comes back and compares his results with the original hypothesis. If the hypothesis is different than the results, the scientist will do what? Let's do it again. Or eventually, the scientist will what? Abandon the hypothesis and say this is something new. On the other hand, a 10-year-old, if the hypothesis is different than the results, the 10-year-old will stay to the hypothesis, will not abandon the hypothesis. Okay, but the scientists investigating. Okay, abstract thinking, that's another feature of adolescence. Abstract thinking. In other words, as a teenager, the definition of liberty, justice, freedom. Okay, a teenager will be able to give you his or her definition. A 10-year-old can memorize something and tell you something, but they can't really tell you the meaning. Abstract thinking. Thinking outside the box, thinking what's not there in front of them. Said before, Piaget called elementary school concrete operations. Concrete operations. And now we're talking about formal operations. Okay, so abstract thinking. Okay, deal with and talk about abstract things that aren't right there in front of you. Also, ability to think about thoughts. That's another feature of adolescence. Ability to think about thoughts. You start seeing signs of that usually around 12, 13, where somebody just says, she thinks she's something. Okay, so the ability to think about thoughts. Fighting words to a teenager. You been talking about me behind my back. Okay, not only the ability to think about their own thoughts, but the ability to think about the thoughts of others. Where a 10-year-old, I don't care what you're talking about, I'm out here playing, I don't care. Where now, the ability to think about thoughts, now, why does she talk to me about me? What does she say about me? Does she like me or doesn't like me? Okay, also hypothetical deduction. Once again, ties into abstract thing. What if? What if New York was west of Chicago and Chicago was west of Seattle? What was the relationship between New York and Seattle? Okay, where a 10-year-old just knows it's not west. New York is not west of Seattle. Whereas, what if a teenager say, okay, well, let's think about that. And a lot of times, teenagers approach a problem, what if, versus teenagers for what is. Also, with this identity is being established. Who do you think you are? Identity. Who do you think you are? And that's Erikson. Okay, in other words, an earlier stage, talking about industry versus inferiority. In other words, self-esteem, how you feel about yourself versus what you know about yourself. And now that turns into, are you a good kid or a bad kid? Now that comes back to where they internalize during adolescence, according to Erikson. Identity. Who are you? I mean, think about it. Cafeteria. You know, you see the brothers over there by the water fountain, the essays out there by the door, the football players have their table, the cheerleaders have their area. They're just trying to develop a sense of identity. Who are they? So when you say it, who do you think you are to a teenager? It drives them bonkers because they don't know who they are. So let's think about this. Also, this is when most people start their bad habits. Usually in adolescence, whether you're drinking or smoking or whatever habit you have, it usually starts sometimes between 13 and 18. You know, when you steal your mom's cigarettes, or get in your dad's stash, or steal some of your parents' liquor, sip some of your dad's beer. Okay, usually it starts during adolescence. Okay, and so this is where good habits are. One of the most successful programs in working with adolescents. Any program that gets them to think about what they do today will influence what happens 5-10 years ago. Or the most successful programs working with teenagers are those where it gets them to make that connection between now and 5 years ago. I mean, think about the jocks, or at least the dedicated jock. I want to go to Nat Pro, whatever. Okay, and I'm not going to go out there and drink and hang out with the fellas because I'm going to do something. You know, we're thinking about the future. Your IB college preparatory kids, same thing. I'm doing my classes to look for the future. Okay, so I want to make sure I get so once again, get the teenagers who are able to put that connection. What you do today is influenced down here. Those are the most successful programs. Upward Bound started in the 60s during, I suspect during the Johnson administration, around the same time Head Start was. It was the most successful program in preparing low-income high school students for college. Upward Bound, really neat program. I actually tutored Upward Bound program in San Francisco for a while, and I also taught math. I taught algebra classes there. And what they do, they have you come during the week, and they come in and maybe get tutoring, or you type of have counselors there and tutors there. They get tutoring. They take brush-up classes. And then on the weekends, they have classes based around their needs. If you're weak in your math, they make you take math classes. If you're weak in writing, they have you that. And then in the summers, a really neat thing about Upward Bound, in the summers, they get to stay on campus in the dormitories. Low-income children, off the farms, the shotgun pickup truck communities or the inner cities. Now, all of a sudden, college becomes on their cognitive map. Okay, and so you start seeing. Also, we're talking about brain development. That brain is maturing during adolescence. The prefrontal cortex. You think about the limbic system, the seat of emotion. You take biological side. The limbic system is fully developed right around 12, 13. But the prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed until around your early 20s. And that's one of the reasons why you see a lot of fights in junior high. You remember back in middle school or junior high, almost a fight every day after school. Okay, part of the reason is that limbic system is fully developed, so you recognize a threat, but the prefrontal cortex isn't developed enough to be able to hold back. Well, that's not that important. Think about all these things go along with adolescence. Like I mentioned before, scientific reasoning, abstract thinking, the ability to think about thoughts, hypothetical reduction, and also, as Erickson say, identity.